You'll find a Mets fan. Let's go. This is a Mets year for all your Mets here. Let's go. Bring it home. Bring it home. Bring it home
exciting, thrilling, awesome. Let's take a look.
What's up, Mets fans? Welcome back to Talking Mets at Rob and a Mets pregame live right here on the channel. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, the owner has spoken, and exactly what you probably thought was going to happen in that press conference, it is exactly what an owner should do. He is not impulsive. He is not reactionary. And for people who think that being an unstable franchise as a new owner in Major League Baseball, you are barking up the wrong tree. All right? There is nothing there that Cohen says that you should be mad about. Everything that you wanted to hear from an owner is, first off, he's not reactionary and not impulsive. You can't, this is not Walmart. This is not Costco. This is not a general manager of a Walmart or a Costco or an owner who can just replace somebody else with just bodies. If that's what you want as a Major League Baseball franchise, ladies and gentlemen, then you are going to be at the bottom of the barrel of Major League Baseball. Stability matters. This is not a positive take on Buck Showalter. He has not had a good season. And accountability matters. Steve Cohen made himself accountable, right? Made himself accountable. That is what you want to hear, right? He put everybody on notice. He did say that Buck Showalter and Billy Epler are safe, right? And That should be the case. Firing a manager after a year and a half, when last year was a 101 win season, and a half a season of a bad season, that is bad. That is the problem that's why fans are not GMs and are not managers and are not owners. You know why? Because we're too reactionary. And I know Ken is the biggest apologist for Brandon Nimmo, but when it comes to Buck Showalter, let's throw him out the window. Because of the fact that Ken, who I'm going to call out because he deserves every minute of it, the fact of the matter is, a guy like Ken, who is impulsive, clearly, is the reason why guys like him and fans like him will never be an owner of a team and never be a GM, because as soon as something bad happens, you get rid of people, right? This is not Costco, this is not Walmart, this is not BJ's. You don't replace bodies with bodies because one person doesn't do a good job, so you bring in another person on a minimum salary. Like, that's exactly what you wanted. And that is the problem with guys like Ken and many others. He's not the only one. I love Ken, but let's be honest, ladies and gentlemen. If you thought that Buck Showalter is going to get fired and then everything changes, the Mets are going to go on a 20-game winning streak because all of a sudden everybody's Rob Thompson, right? Joe Girardi had 3 years before he got started, right? He had an opportunity to change the negativity, the bad part of what was going on during the first couple of seasons from 2019 until he got fired in 2022, right? You don't make changes just because things aren't working out in not even a half a season yet. No, Ken, it's just that I'm banning you tonight. You know why? Because you're an embarrassment to Mets fans. That is the problem. You are an embarrassment to the Mets fan base. You are banned from being a Mets fan today. You know why? Because this is what you wanted. You wanted Buck and Epler fired. In a year and a half, you want a GM and a manager fired off of a half a season, when you were basically licking his shoes last year because of how good Buck Showalter did. We all were. And this is not saying that Buck Showalter has done a good job. He hasn't. But the last time I checked, Buck Showalter did not go on the mound every fifth day and not pitch 6 innings for the first month and a half of the season. That is the problem with impulsive owners. Remember, guys, everybody wants to applaud George Steinbrenner, right? His impulsive reactions to everything that went wrong. What? The Mets beat us in spring training? Oh, somebody's getting fired. Oh, wait, we're having right? He wanted to fire Joe Torre before they went on their run, right? He wanted Buck Showalter back before Joe Torre took the Yankees to World Series dynasties. It's just amazing to me how people think. You just don't understand that stability matters in sports. I'm sorry, right? People want to bring up, right? There was people in the chat the other day. Oh, I wish the Mets were like the Reds organization. Yeah, because they won so much, right? They go on a 12-game winning streak and everybody wants to be the Cincinnati Reds. I can assure you the fans didn't even want to be Cincinnati Reds. Come on, guys. You have to be smart about this. You have to think long-term. You can't just think. I just want you guys to think for 1 second. Since Cohen took over ownership, and if you want to fire Billy Epler, if you want to fire Buck Showalter, in 2.5 years of ownership, Steve Cohen will be going on his third manager and his third GM, because Alderson and Epler are 1 and 2. So in not even 2.5 years, you're going to have 3 managers and 3 GMs under your ownership in 2.5 years. Well, you want to have the Mets more like the Phillies. I mean, the Phillies should be embarrassed for the Mets giving them a game. I mean, that's embarrassing. I'm embarrassed for you because the Mets were actually giving you a game that you didn't deserve. Go figure. right? Here's the other problem. Nobody wants to work for an owner that you have to look over their shoulder. I'm sorry. Nobody likes to be micromanaged. If you want your owner to be a micromanager, you are going to have bad employees. It's very simple, guys. It's not that hard to understand. And if you don't get it, right? Again, I keep on bringing up this point, right? This is not Walmart where you can fire and just put new bodies in. The business is going to keep going. This is not a situation where you want to just throw anybody. Ken wants to throw anybody in there and think it's going to work out. Let's throw Carlos Beltran. Yeah, let's bring up somebody with no experience just because he hit a few home runs for the Mets and caught a few nice balls in center field. All of a sudden, he's going to be a great manager. And then when he doesn't work out, great. So Cohen's going to fire him, and in 3 years of ownership, he's going on his fourth manager. That is not a stable environment. Nobody wants to come to this. And Steve Cohen said it. If you're going to be reactionary and impulsive and fire people, fire this person and that person, nobody who is good for your organization would want to come. There's a reason why Billy Epler was hired. Not because he was the best guy available. You know why? Because he went to Theo Epstein. He had Zach Scott. He had Jared Porter until the sexual harassment things happened and they had to get fired. Right? He had an opportunity to think about what he wanted with David Stearns. He went after him. Contract-wise, he couldn't get him. So Billy Epler was basically his fourth choice. He needed a GM at that time and the person willing to take the job because no GM was going to go into Steve Cohen and take a part of this organization and say, and then knowing that they're basically on the hot seat from day one because of the fact nobody knows what Steve Cohen is. Nobody knows. You're going to be one of the guys where a lot of people know that David Stern is the guy. Everybody knows that. So if you're a GM or somebody who wants to take a player of baseball operations, what do you think is going to happen? I'm sorry. I don't want to take a job. If I go into an interview with a company and I know their track history of firing people, am I going to take that job knowing that there's a pretty good chance based on history that I could be fired within a year? I'm sorry. Nobody's going to do that. And that's exactly what is the problem here with the stability of a franchise, right? Dave Roberts is a terrible manager, right? The Dodgers won despite their manager in 2020 and continue to have great seasons despite their manager. Dave Roberts is an embarrassment of a manager. Worse than Buck Showalter this year. That's how bad Dave Roberts has been. Why hasn't he been fired? How many times have Dodger fans called for his head? All of a sudden, he's a great manager? Come on, guys. It doesn't make sense. It's embarrassing when people want to be impulsive. And that's why me, you, and the person next to you are not GMs because we're too reactionary. And you know what? We should be as fans because we demand excellence. We paid a lot of money to go to these games and watch these games on TV. We put out our soul into this team. And it's appropriate to be reactionary as a fan. But you can't be a fan owning a team. You can't be a fan as a GM. It's a dangerous game. You're on thin ice in that situation. It wasn't a back page press conference, nor should it be. Right? There's a couple of things that I want to bring up. A couple of things I want to bring up because I put it down. Here we go. Let's see. What do we got? All right. Here's one of the quotes. Everyone says fire this person, fire that person. I don't see that as a way to operate. If you want to attract good people to this organization, the worst thing you can do is be impulsive. That is Steve Cohen's mouth. And then he also said this in his opening statement. It's been incredibly frustrating. Hopefully we can right the ship. The season is not over. I'm preparing my management team for all possibilities. If we don't get better, we have decisions to make at the deadline. And then the unfortunate part with Ken and probably others that don't pay attention to the situation and just want a reaction instead of stability. And that doesn't work for franchises if you haven't paid attention to that, right? The Phillies weren't reactionary last year. They gave Girardi 2.5 years, basically 3 years, 3.5 years to get that team to the playoffs. That was 3.5 years before they fired him mid-season. It wasn't 1.5 years. That's an embarrassment. All right? That's George Steinbrenner-esque. If you want him to be that way, fine. George Steinbrenner won nothing if it wasn't for Stick Michaels. If George Steinbrenner wasn't suspended from Major League Baseball for that time, there would have never been a Yankees dynasty. Stability matters. Right? Here's what he said, right? Buck and Billy, are they safe? He's for the rest of the season. He said absolutely, which they should be. Give Buck Showalter the rest of the year to try to turn this around. If he doesn't, then you can go over and say, all right, listen, one bad year, one good year. Do I think Buck Showalter is the guy to take us forward? If you want to fire him at the end of the season, I'm all for that. Same thing with Billy Epler, which I don't think is going to happen with Billy Epler because I think it's this whole Ohtani situation, and that's going to determine exactly what Billy Epler is going to be going forward. And also, you talked about David Stearns, where he's good friends with Billy Epler. They're probably going to work together, but David Stearns is going to have authority to do everything. This is what also he said. He's looking to hire to a president of baseball operations. It's not easy to find that, right? Clearly, people don't want to take that job yet because they don't know what type of owner Steve Cohen is. If Steve Cohen, in 2.5 years of owning this team, is reactionary and impulsive and fires people and going on the third GM and the third manager in 2.5 years of owning the team, well, guess what? Nobody's going to work for you. You're going to get bad people who are looking for jobs, right? You didn't want Billy Epler, but yet you want somebody else who is bad or if not worse because they need a job. The people who want to come here and are good for an organization who have proven track records are not going to want to come here because they don't want to get fired in a year and a half. It's bad business. And then he also says, doesn't want to broach the topic of Max Scherzer and Verlander yet, right? He did say that it would be silly to add if we continue to go on this path we're going by the deadline, which makes sense, right? Everything you wanted to hear from Steve Cohen, except for firing Buck Showalter or Billy Epler. But if you paid attention, which clearly some people didn't, if Steve Cohen was going to fire Billy Epler and Buck Showalter today at that press conference, they would have spoken yesterday on behalf of the organization. Common sense, people, you got to have a little bit of it. It's not that hard to figure out. And Mets fan, he's not a career loser. Okay, because if you gave an opportunity to manage the 96 Yankees, he would have won. And he probably would have been a part of that. You're going to tell me Joe Torre is all of a sudden a better manager than Buck Showalter? Or Buck Showalter and Stick Michaels as a team, built that dynasty, and Joe Torre got all the praise for it. Right? With the Diamondbacks, they won one World Series, right? Buck Showalter built that team. Now, I'm not saying that Buck Showalter is the best manager ever. That's embarrassing to say that because he's shown moments where he's not. But find me a manager that makes every good move, right? In 2021, Brian Snitker was on the hot seat for the Atlanta Braves. Everybody thought that he was going to turn it around because he grew up, he managed through the organization. You got to give Cohen time here, guys. He started owning this team with Luis Rojas, Brody Van Wagenen, and Sandy Alderson a part of this team. He kept them because it was around the time he owned this team when it was basically right when the offseason was starting. In the middle of the offseason, it was hard to do that. Well, okay, Mets fan, but again, if managers really matter, then the Dodgers should be a bad team. No, Dave Roberts is an embarrassment to the manager position. He's a terrible manager. He's a terrible postseason manager, along with Buck Showalter. But why can't we give Buck Showalter more than a year and a half? Why is that? And I'm not saying give him to the end of the year, which clearly Cohen's going to do. If he doesn't turn it around, you would know. If the Mets don't turn it around in a month, in 2 weeks, by the deadline, we know Buck Showalter's fate then. We all do. So it's not like we're gonna have to wait until the end of the year until he gets fired. If the Mets become sellers at the deadline, that means they didn't turn it around. So Buck Showalter's fate at the end of the season is done, and it's just gonna run its course. Yeah, Tim, I agree. We need younger pitching, but that takes time in the farm system. So you can't. So if nobody wanted to spend money on the farm on the pitching, McGill and Peterson would be at the top of your rotation. Are you satisfied with that? If Steve Cohen would have came in owning this team and would have said to everybody, as the richest owner in baseball, we're going to go through a rebuilding process. I'm not going to spend right now. We're going to rebuild. So that means with Alonso in the prime of his career, with Nimmo in the prime of his career, McNeil at the prime of his career, at the time, Jacob deGrom on the edge of his prime of his career. You're going to rebuild, which is going to take 3 or 4 years. By that time, Alonso is going to be a free agent. Nimmo became a free agent. deGrom is 34 years old. McNeil was going to be a free agent. Well, guess what? That's what you wanted? Because a lot of people were saying that. You wanted to do that? The Mets are rebuilding a farm system while spending money to try to put a competitive team on the field. The Mets don't have no pitching prior to this year, this offseason, that was going to be on this Major League roster that can help this rotation. Mike Vasil just got to AAA. The guys like Hamill, guys like Ziegler, they're a couple of years away. Excuse me. It takes time. Vasil will probably be up next year. But that's next year. What about this year, guys? That's what you have to look at. That is the most important thing you have to look at. I'm sorry. I'd rather have an owner not trade prospects. If that's what they don't want to do, that's fine. But you can't not spend money and just put anybody in anything on the field and saying we're going to put a competitive team out there. It just doesn't make sense. You know what I'm saying, guys? Like you can't just do that. Their free agent signings that cost them picks, yeah, but it didn't hurt them in the draft. They had the best draft overall last year, according to MLB reporters and experts of the draft. They had the number 1 overall draft, and that was with signing guys that involved the draft pick. But there was also guys that were Mets free agents that the Mets gave qualifying offers to, and the Mets got draft picks for them. So it's kind of a balance there. That is what you have to look at. We keep on looking at it as a 1-year perspective. Like, if you don't realize what Steve Cohen's doing, then 1, you don't understand baseball, and 2, the team that is in your own division is showing you how to do it, right? The Braves aren't 20th in payroll anymore. They're top 10 in payroll. That is what all their young kids bring it up. But you know what? They traded for Olsen. They signed Olsen, right? They traded for Murphy, right? They supplemented their great young talent. That takes time, right? When the Nationals were winning divisions, the Braves weren't. They were going through rough seasons to get their good draft picks, to get the Rileys, the Acuñas, the Albies, the Freeds, I mean, come on, guys. That is the point. You know, we act like nobody was excited about signing Max Scherzer. We got to remember, we didn't have a rotation, guys. Right? If you didn't have nothing in the farm system, which is Brody's fault and Sandy Alderson's fault, not Epler's or Steve Cohen's. The Braves are a great organization. But as great as they are, they finally won. With all those division titles, they finally won in 2021. With all those great years, their great pitching staffs over the years, right? The dominance of the 90s with them, with that great pitching staff. I always remember the Brian Jordan's breaking my heart. The Andrew Jones, the Chipper Jones, all those guys. You have to look at it in a perspective of, do you want to build a team by a farm system? Which, let's be honest, guys, if you can't build a farm system if you can't build a team with McNeil, Alonso, Nimmo, Beatty, and Alvarez, then the Mets have a long time to get better. Because that is your core. The Yankees had a core four, right? They supplemented with trades the Paul O'Neills, the Tina Martinez, right? We forget all that. The Davis Justices of the world, the Luis Sohos, right? We act like they brought in guys, right? David Cohn. These weren't farm hands. These were guys that they brought in. So it's not always just about the farm system. Yes, if the Mets had starting pitching that was coming up, it's easier to spend money on the rest of the team when you don't have to spend a ton of money. Steve Cohen said it himself. Starting pitching is expensive. Guys like Taijuan Walker, guys like Jose Quintana, Carlos Carrasco, these guys are mid-level pitchers. Mid-level, if not bad starting pitchers that are getting $15 million a year. Pitches is expensive. If you don't have young talent, why are you blaming Epler when he had one draft? Bring Brody. Bring Sandy Alderson, who wanted to draft 37 shortstops and 27 catchers and 14 outfielders and never drafted pitching. Right? Sandy Alderson drafted two guys, Ziegler and Matt Allen. Ziegler still got a chance coming out of college. Mississippi State. Matt Allen has been injured. Again, you can't predict that. He has great talent, but he's injured. You got to remember, guys. And, Mauricio might give us a spark, but the offense is not our problem. It's the pitching. Look what happens when you get 6 innings from David Freaking Peterson. You win ball games. The Mets are 22-3 when a starting pitcher goes 6 innings or more? That's a great stat. They're about 17 games under 500 when their team doesn't, when their pitcher doesn't. Right? It's not just about the process. The problem is that for everybody who says, "Oh, just rebuild," you're embarrassing yourself. Because it's not happening. You're not rebuilding and having an owner saying, "All right, I'm not gonna spend nothing. Our payroll is gonna be $100 million, and we're just gonna rebuild. We have a losing season. Oh well." I'd rather have an owner spend money and try to win while rebuilding. Gotta remember, guys, the Mets had a 101-win season with spending a ton of money last year without giving the farm system away. Right? Same thing this year. We know they're not trading big prospects. So if they do get back into this race here, they're going to be buyers by taking on a bad contract to get somebody they want from another organization to help this team. And if the Mets are sellers, well, you got David Robinson, who's having a great year, who got Hunter Brown from the Phillies. The Cubs got Hunter Brown from the Phillies, who is a fifth prospect in the Cubs system now. So David Robinson wasn't having as good a year as he's having this year. You can get a top 5 prospect for him. Tommy Pham, you might even get more than what you got from Escobar because he's a bat that teams might need off the bench or who might need that outfielder to help them out. Yeah, Mike, but the problem with that is that a lot of teams don't do that, right? It's rare, right? That is not normal what the Braves do. That's an anomaly, right? It doesn't happen often. And again, those are the Atlanta Braves that's a desperate, not a desperate move in a bad sense, but that's a move because they know if that player doesn't accept that player is gone. Exactly like Swanson. Swanson's gone because the Braves know they can't afford that contract in that part of the career of Swanson. They weren't never bringing him back, right? Brave fans couldn't wait to get rid of him. And again, they're having a great season, but that's because they have a lot of other talent as well. But they traded for Olsen and then they signed him. They traded for Murphy and signed him, right? Albies, Acuna, Riley, those guys, yeah, they did a great job with that. But that's rare. This is not something that's like all around the league and the Mets are forgetting to do it. It doesn't happen very often, right? The Braves aren't in the Mets or the Yankees or the Dodgers situation or the Padres situation where they can just go out there and have a $275 million payroll, right? They're not doing that. I agree. I never said Alonso was having a great season, right? I'm sorry. I just don't want a home run hitter, right? That's what he is right now, right? He's not a guy that, he batted nearly 270 last year. That was the Alonso I want. Yeah, Tim, we should have kept Bassett, but was Bassett going to help this rotation if every other pitcher doesn't go more than 5 innings? That's the problem. And again, all of a sudden everybody wants Bassett, but yet last year everybody couldn't wait to get rid of him. The two biggest games of the year, and you will see this with Toronto, the biggest games of the year for them, he will choke because he's done that throughout his entire career. Look at his stats with Oakland in big games. Terrible. Over a 5 ERA. Had a great season, but when it counted the most, and that's the whole point, right? Great. We have a great season, and then when it matters the most, you fall apart. I'm sorry. That's not what you want. So I'm going to go through the lineup really quick, guys, for you guys. Again, I can only do a pregame. I got to go to work not too long, so that's how it is. Yeah, okay. You'd rather have Olsen, but the Mets didn't have the prospects to trade them. Like, again, every team would want a player that is really good. It doesn't happen. There's 30 teams, 26-man roster. All right? Pete Alonso, we can have a lot worse than Pete Alonso, Mets fan. I mean, you're always negative, so it really doesn't matter. The Mets will win the World Series, and you'll find you'll be like Frank the Tank. The Mets will win the World Series, and you'll find something that you don't like and call it a negative. You would complain about the big truck they're on going down the Canyon of Heroes. You're never going to be happy. That is your problem. That is nobody else's problem. Ronnie doesn't need to be up because his offense has been fine. They've been scoring 5.5 runs per game. And if the pitching actually showed up, they would win more games. That's it. The Mets have been a better offensive team than last year. Runs per game are a run better than last year. It's the pitching, guys. If you don't realize that by now, you are watching the wrong team. Right? Ron and Mauricio can't pitch. He's not going to help this team, guys. Yeah, we might score 9 runs, but we'll probably give up 10. I mean, did we watch the Phillies game the other day? Come on. The pitching is the concern. That's why if the Mets find a way in a miracle to get back in this race, all you're going to need is arms. The Yankees look terrible. You know why? they're hovering around 7-8 games over 500 over this stretch when Judge hasn't been out because they have a really good bullpen. It means all the difference in the world. Yeah, but you see, Verlander, he didn't have a great outing, but I'd rather have an outing where he grinds through it and give his team a chance to win. The problem with the rotation for the majority of the year, when a pitcher would go 20 innings, 20 pitches in the first inning, they wouldn't get out of that jam, right? Peterson yesterday. Last month, Peterson would give up 5 runs in that first inning. Tim, it's right now. It's Vasil who just came to AAA. You got Hamill. You got Ziegler. You got guys in the system. Vasil will probably be up. Vasil will be probably up next year. Tidwell, another guy. No, Tidwell won't be better than. See, this is the problem, Mets fan. You don't get it, right? Brett Beatty is batting 236. He's batting 350 in the minor leagues with 12 home runs? He's a shell of himself if you look at his AAA numbers. AAA numbers don't matter. Get that out of your head. Right? Give these guys a chance. Why are you going to bring up a prospect now? Because you're looking for the prospect to come up to help this team. No, I don't want that anymore. If you already think this season is done, then bring it up. But the Mets don't see it like that. You're not mathematically out. You go through a 10-game stretch where you have a run like the Reds had, like the A's had, 7-game winning streak. You go through that 10-game stretch, if you win 8 out of 10, you're right back in the mix, right? The problem with bringing up Beatty and bringing up Alvarez is that you wanted them to be our saviors. And then you find out that they can't be our saviors. They can be productive, but not to the level that they were doing in AAA. But Yuri Perez went through the system. Again, just because Vasil looks good in AA and then gets promoted to AAA and been pretty good in AAA so far, doesn't mean you can just bring him up. It doesn't work like that. You got to understand the process. The problem is, Mets fan, you don't have a process mind. You don't have that type of process. You are, just like Ken, is reactionary, impulsive, terrible for an organization. You're a fan. You're supposed to be that way, but you're not rational. You want Olsen because he's having a better season than Alonso this year. He didn't last year. Alonso was better. Right? Do you want 250 strikeouts? Because Olsen is a home run or nothing else. Again, he is protected by a lineup that is better than what Pete Alonso has. That's the problem. Right? If Olsen was in this Mets lineup, we would be killing him because he would have a ton of strikeouts, a lot more than Pete Alonso, and he would be home run or bust. The difference with Olsen is that he's in a great lineup that is supplemented. Well, again, Sandra, I agree with you. Again, I'm not saying Alonso's having a great year. But again, we can do a lot worse. Do you want Dominic Smith right now? Right? Everybody was like, oh, I can't believe we let Dominic Smith go. Dominic Smith's terrible in Washington. You want him instead of Alonso? Yeah, I guarantee this team would be about 10 more games worse. Right? We have to think about process before we get reactionary. Because the problem is that everybody think they can be a GM. Everybody can think they can be a manager or an owner. The reason why we're not, minus the money, is the fact of the matter is that we're too reactionary. We're too impulsive. And I brought this up in the beginning of the stream. This is sports. Stability matters. And I bring up the Knicks, the Rangers, and the Jets for a reason. 2 teams I'm a fan of. Look how many coaches and GMs they have gone through over the last 10 years. And then you wonder why they're not successful and they don't get to the promised land because of the lack of stability. You can't fire GMs and managers every 2.5 years and expect things to go right. Right? That's hitting lightning in a bottle. Right? How many fans wanted Terry Collins fired in 2015? Right? Davey Johnson, Bobby Valentine, Terry Collins. When you let that stability stick a little bit, you might have a better chance than being reactionary. That is the problem. Even Willie Randolph got close to 4 years before they fired him on that West Coast trip. You got to understand the fact that go back to any team, right? I want to go back to the Phillies, right? People want to bring back, oh, look what the Phillies did last year. So you get mad at me when I bring up the past, but when you bring up the past to fit your argument, it's okay. Doesn't work like that. No, we can't beat 10 games better without him. Because who is going to be a first baseman? Mark Hanna? Again, Alonso hasn't been good this year. This is why I get on people with Lindor. Again, Lindor has been the most clutch player on this team by far. Find me a shortstop that's going to hit 30 and 100 this year. Probably not more than maybe one. He leads in home runs. He leads in RBIs. Right? The average needs to get up there. Right? For a guy who shouldn't be hitting 30 home runs is on pace to hit 30 and a little bit above 100 RBIs. I'm sorry. I'll take that every day of the week. Or do you want Andres Jimenez back and Amed Rosario, who aren't even close to the player Lindor is? Right? Lindor is batting over 290 with runners in scoring position. Has 39 RBIs with runners in scoring position. With runners on base. Has 6 home runs with runners on base. Now, he needs to be better with average. But all of a sudden, people care about average all of a sudden. Wow. Congratulations. You're back to regular baseball. Muttley, I'm not staying for the game. I got to go to work, unfortunately. But the game is about to start. The lineup for the New York Mets is this before the game starts. I will show you it. I'll tell you it, I should say. Excuse me. Here we go, guys. So, the New York Mets. Nimmo leading off, playing center field. Stalamante right field. Batting second. Batting third. Francisco Lindor playing shortstop. Alonso cleaning up, playing first base. Tommy Pham playing left field, batting fifth. Francisco Alvarez batting sixth. Catching. Brett Beatty batting seventh. Playing third base. Mark Canha DH and batting eighth. And Mendick playing second base. Batting ninth. McNeil is not in the lineup tonight. Get Diaz, brother. Yeah, that's so easy when the Reds are in first place. Stupid comment. See, you're not paying attention to anything that's going on, Mets fan. Reactionary. Another problem. You're not thinking. Think a little bit. The Reds are in first place. Why would they trade us then? Hello? Maybe 2 months ago, yeah. Not happening. Think before you talk. Think before you type. You're going to learn something. Trust me. With that said, guys, the game is starting. Everybody, thank you for tuning into the Mets pregame show. Let's go, Mets. Let's see if we can win 2 in a row and get a little bit of a winning streak going here. The Mets have a chance to turn things around. Will it happen? Not the way they've been playing, but it could happen. Possibly. We'll see. With that said, everybody have a great night. I will see you guys again tomorrow. Hopefully, we get a ball game here that we win. Senga pitches good. The offense will probably show up. And we'll win another ball game. That's all it takes. 1 game at a time. With that said, everybody have a great night. Let's go, Mets. If you don't think Steve Cohen is a competent owner, you are not paying attention. Because he's rational. He's not reactionary. Thank you, Michael. I agree, committee, 100%. But we got to start winning before we think about being those buyers with the arms. With that said, everybody have a great night. Let's go, Mets. I will see you tomorrow night, guys. Have a good night.